Hi, everybody. Your girl Poise Chaos is back. Today, we're going to discuss the annual performance review process. It's that time of the year that you start to think about all of the things that you accomplished throughout the year. People always ask me, how do I take a year of performance and put it into a document that really articulates the things that I've accomplished this year? Keep on watching and I'll show you how. First time to the Poise Chaos channel, welcome. This channel was created in order to build life skills as well as awaken that inner voice for you to be able to find something that brings you joy. So let's get into today's discussion, the end of the year process. I have conversations all the time with employees around how do I take the entire year of performance and put it into a place that really articulates the things that really made me successful this year. I always like to think about it in three key areas. Now, before we get into the three key areas that helps me write my performance review, I want to give you guys a little tip. Throughout the year, I always keep tabs on all of the things that I've accomplished throughout the year. I actually have a reminder on my calendar for the first Friday of every month, because that's typically when I work from home, that I write around what did I accomplish for the month? What did I drive? What results did I have? And I typically I started doing that about 3 years ago, because what I felt like at the end of the year, I was so overwhelmed with trying to really articulate all the things that I've done throughout the year that it made it challenging. And then I felt like there was things that I missed after the review based on the conversations that I had with the leader. So I started capturing the things that I was delivering on every month. And then what I did was at the end of the year, when it was time to write my performance appraisal, I had all of those things handy. So I hope that was helpful. So now let's get into the mechanics of how do you write your performance appraisal. So I like to think of my performance in three areas. What did I build? What did I drive? And what was the result of all of that? Not only does that help you throughout your performance appraisal, it also helps you in interviewing when you're trying to articulate the things that you were able to execute on throughout your career. So let's talk about something. What did I build? So one of the things that I felt really strongly about that I accomplished this year in my role, now I know I've changed jobs, so we'll talk about that in a later video, but just for the context, so this year, my team built a leadership development program for one of my lines of business. Now, although the organization has this bigger leadership development program, the frontline leaders were missing in that process because they only focused on a certain level of leaders. So what my president asked me to do was, how do we come up with something that we can tackle the frontline managers? And my team and I sat down and brainstormed, and we built a program that we took the leaders through annually. And then we had some follow-ups quarterly that attached to the goals that we were doing. So that's something that I built this year that will definitely go in my performance appraisal. Now, when you think about what did I drive, because remember, I'm thinking about three key areas. What did I build? What did I drive? And what was the result? So let's talk about what I drove. So from the beginning of the project, not only did I help drive the strategy of the project, not only did I help drive the influence of the project, I also helped drive the execution of the project by bringing all of the stakeholders together, by identifying all the people that should be part of this program. And then also, not only do I build out 2 days of this program, I also made sure that we had some ROIs and metrics that we were measuring every single quarter in order to drive it. I was also making sure that I was leveraging my functional partners throughout that. So as you can see how I'm discussing kind of what I've been doing, not only am I articulating that I built something and I'm driving something to execution, I've also leveraged all of my tools and resources that were available to me in order for me to get this over the finish line. So that's something that I drove. So the result for some people is always hard to bring together. So that's why when I always try to build something and drive something, I always make sure that I tie it back to a specific business result. So specifically when I'm thinking about the project that I felt like I built this year and also felt like that I drove this year, I was able to articulate how that actually had an impact on the business by seeing the business results change. So for example, part of one of the components of the leadership program that we developed as a team is that there was an area that was centered around how are you able to have feedback conversations, but not only feedback conversations, how do you change up your leadership style in order to have the conversation with the person in front of you? So I was able to take a team that had really low engagement scores, and I saw that at the end of the year when we did the survey prior to the leadership development and then doing the engagement survey at the end of the program, the leader got some high marks just around their level of engagement, their level of coaching, how direct their feedback was. So when I think about how do I articulate throughout the year one big rock that I moved this year, I was able to talk about something that I built by building this leadership development program for our frontline managers. I talked about how I drove it by getting all the stakeholders involved, putting all of the content together, leveraging all of the expertise so that we can bring it home. And when I talk about the result, I'm able to tie that directly, the engagement scores directly back to the business result. So I hope that made sense. Now let's go into two different areas of this conversation. Now, we don't want to put in all of these low level things in our performance review. We really want to try to focus on big rocks. And what I mean by big rocks is like what projects that we were able to do, or what results were we able to change, what sales were we able to drive, whatever those things look like. That's the primary focus that you want to do in your performance appraisal. You want to put all these other things that really don't articulate the skills that you have. Now, let's talk about the challenges. I always believe that there's something that everybody needs to work on. It doesn't need to be rainbows and unicorns, right? What you really need to be articulating, what were some of the roadblocks that you might have had? So one of the things that I put in my performance review was that I had a significant learning curve of really understanding the business and how it operated. So it took me a little bit longer to get this leadership program off the ground because I felt like I was going into an area that I probably shouldn't have, but that was because there was a gap in the business acumen that just gave me a little bit of roadblocks. But how I was able to turn that around is that I spent my time with a lot of the frontline managers and really digging deep and making sure that I understood what their skills gap were and what I was able to help them achieve. So to me, always make sure that when you are talking about your performance, never forget to talk about the challenges, because people want you to walk away with a sense of self-awareness. And you have to remember, in organizations, people are talking throughout the year. Every day is not a good day. And some days you have a bad day. Some days you don't show up on projects good. Some days you miss the mark on things. And it's okay to acknowledge that, but it's always good to make sure that you're self-aware enough to put that in your performance appraisal. That doesn't mean that you're going to get a low rating. I personally like it and think that it's good to have self-awareness. So we talked about the performance appraisal process. We talked about some of the filters that you use when you build it out. Now, what does this actually all mean? I've heard throughout my career that people don't like doing performance reviews. They feel like they're a waste of time. They feel like they really don't add value. But I will tell you, there have been times where leaders have actually sent me people's performance reviews and had one perspective of the things that they've done throughout the year and have changed that perspective just like based on what they write. That's why it's always important to use that as an advocacy for you. So that's why you do it. So now what happens is when you get the performance reviews, you have to rate yourself, and then your manager has to rate you and give you feedback. And then it all ties up into merit increases and bonuses. That's why, to me, I feel like employees miss the mark because they don't spend enough time investing and making sure that they write a really good performance appraisal. So remember, talk about what you built, talk about what you drove, and then also talk about the result, because that yields into money, honey. It yields into good merit increases. It yields into bonuses. So let me kind of take a step back and talk about what the implications are when you do get a good performance rating. So say, for example, there's a pool of money that every leader gets every single year. So say the pool of money across their team is $100,000 and they have 4 people. Based on your performance rating, if you're rated high, you might get the top tier of that of that merit increase pool. Now, if you are average or you're just hitting the mark, then you get that middle ground. So that could be anywhere between 2 to 3%. Now, if you're a top performer and you have achieved expectations, then you typically are probably getting anywhere between 4% and above, which can end up being a lot of money. But also sometimes it also impacts your bonus because you can get a multiplier. So what a multiplier means is that sometimes if the bonus structure is 100% and you get above target, then you could potentially get anywhere between 105, 110 based on how your organization operates. Like I work for an organization that you can get upwards to 120% multiplier, which can yield once again to a lot of money, honey. So that's why it's important that you're doing your work, you're having a stellar year, you're making sure that you're putting all of that stuff in a review because that impacts everything. Now, I also want to always try to make sure that I pull back the curtain and I talk about bonuses and merit increases. So I just went over bonuses and merit increases and how they work. Now, there's two things I want to give you guys tips on. The first one is you have to understand what your bonus structure is. So for example, if you're thinking about leaving an organization, I always tell people now is not the time. I left the last company I worked. I told myself that if I was going to leave, I was going to wait until after January because I knew, and it's not a secret, you can ask, but I knew that as long as I was an employee, January 1st of that following year, then I would get my bonus. So say, for example, I knew that I was going to leave a job and I found a job and I got an offer at the end of the year. I wouldn't make my effective date until January 1st, 2019, because as long as I'm an active employee on their payroll of December 31st of 2018, I will get my full bonus the following year. And I can go off and ride into glory and go to a new job and get my bonus and still do that. Also, you want to make sure is that not only do you understand the bonus structure, you want to also understand the proration. So for example, one of the questions I asked when I started my new job, I knew I was starting in the middle of their fiscal year. So that means that either I'm not going to be eligible for a bonus, which means I'll negotiate on the front end to make sure that I get a sign-on that'll supplement it because I won't be getting a bonus that year. Or I make sure that if I do, it might be a proration of what I did. Most organizations, if you start before a certain time and it's typically 6 months, then you'll get a proration of your bonus. So if the fiscal year, say, ends in September and you started in May or April, then you're probably going to get about 6%, well, maybe 50% of your bonus or some type of proration. All right, everybody, I hope this information is helpful. Remember, do your performance appraisals. They are important. It helps advocate for you in all different types of situations when it comes to your merit increases and your bonuses. And remember, talk about what you built, talk about what you drove, and then talk about the result. Also, remember, don't forget the tip. Make sure that you understand and know when your bonuses are paid out and what the proration is, just in case you're trying to make any type of moves. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about today. I look forward to connecting with you again. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we'll talk soon.